Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 7 Part 21 based on novel. So let's start. There was an extremely large mountain deep within Desolate Hall. The mountain was withered yellow in color and there was not the slightest greenery on top. From a far distance away, it looked like a barren land filled with a desolate aura. In the sky above this mountain peak, an enormous pill river whistled past. At this moment, this pill river, which would usually not stop flowing, revealed a strange phenomenon. Not only did the whistling speed slow down, but an incomparably vast and mighty nirvana chi was continuously pouring down from the pill river. That manner was as though a huge hole had been formed in the pill river. Nirvana chi whizzed down like floodwater before it finally poured onto the large mountaintop. Buzz buzz. That mountain actually began to tremble when the pill river poured down. Rock fragments continued to fall and numerous large cracked lines began to form on the mountain. Swoosh swoosh. When this drastic change occurred on the mountaintop, countless rushing wind sounds were also emitted from the sky all around. After a couple of minutes, the surrounding sky, large trees, and mountain were immediately occupied by a densely packed sea of people. The originally quiet mountain forest turned incomparably lively at this moment. Various noises gathered together and spread in a deafening manner. Even the clouds in the sky were scattered. These people not only consisted of the disciples from Desolate Hall. Even the disciples from the 3 other halls had all rushed over. This was because they were clearly aware that what was going to happen next could perhaps alter the ranking of the 4 halls. Other than the hall competition, it was extremely rare to see the disciples from all 4 halls gathering together. Even when the disciples from Sky Hall learned the Sky Emperor scripture, it did not cause such a commotion. From this, one could tell the degree of respect the Great Desolation scripture had in the hearts of the Tao sect's disciples. Swoosh! Numerous rays of light rushed over from the distant sky. Finally, when they were about to reach this mountaintop that had undergone a drastic change, they revealed themselves. The 2 of them in front were Chen Zhen and Wu Dao. There were 6 people following behind them. All 6 of them were quite old. Their auras were all powerful and mighty and were not the least bit weaker than Chen Zhen. Amongst the 6, 3 of them were not strangers. They were the deputy hall chiefs of the 3 other halls whom Lin Dong had met when he first entered Tao sect. Clearly, the remaining 3, who had even more powerful auras than them, were naturally the chief of the 3 other halls. This time around, the opening of the Great Desolate Tablet had actually attracted all the 3 other hall chiefs over. Even the chief of Sky, Earth and Flood halls have come. Jiang Hao, one of the senior direct disciples of the Desolate Hall, stood in the midair and looked at the few figures in front. He involuntarily smacked his mouth and laughed. What is there to be surprised about? Other than these hall chiefs, I believe that perhaps even some extremely senior elders are observing this place secretly. Studying the Great Desolation scripture is a major event for our Tao sect. Pang Tong said. If we can successfully comprehend the Great Desolation scripture this time around, our Desolate Hall will likely be able to improve its ranking in the upcoming hall competition. Fang Yun stared at the shaking mountain and was ready to get into the action. Pang Tong turned silent when he heard this and he did not utter even a single word. Being the most experienced senior direct disciple in Desolate Hall, he clearly understood the difficulty of comprehending the Great Desolation scripture. In the past 100 years, everyone was left disappointed after the Great Desolate Tablet opened up. Who knows if today will be the exception? Hey, where is that fellow, Lin Dong? If he ends up missing such a major event, would he not end up knocking himself to death from regret? Fang Yun's eyes swept around before asking in a surprised manner. He went to meet the sect master half a month ago. They brought back the immortal Yuan ancient seed and performed a deed of great merit. The sect master should have given him a reward. However, you can be rest assured that given his character, it is impossible for him to miss this chance to study the Great Desolate scripture. Pang Tong said. That fellow Lin Dong. I heard that he even wounded Yao Ling, who was ranked 4th on the sect's wanted list. What an abnormal fellow, Jiang Hao laughed bitterly. Junior Lin Dong is also a disciple of our Desolate Hall. The stronger he becomes, the better it is for our desolate hall. You should not feel unhappy just because you lost to him. Pang Tong knitted his brows and lectured. Being the most experienced senior direct disciple, his prestige in the desolate hall was clearly quite high. How is that possible? I am not such a petty person. If he can comprehend the great desolation scripture this time around, I will be happy as well. Otherwise, our desolate hall will end up losing faith again during the upcoming hall competition. Jiang Hao spoke helplessly. Pang Tong nodded with satisfaction when he heard this. He was just about to speak when a great number of rushing wind sound was suddenly transmitted from a distance away. After which, dozens of figures rushed over and landed a short distance away from them. The surrounding Dao sect's disciples immediately erupted into an uproar when this group appeared. Those many gazes that shot over also became a lot more respectful. That is Big Senior Sister Xiao Xiao and her group. There is also Senior Qing Yi from Earth Hall and Senior Mu Li from Flood Hall. TSK, it is rumored that the three of them have all comprehended the mysterious scriptures of their respective halls. They can be considered as the most outstanding trio amongst the Dao sect younger generation members. That's right. It is especially the case for Big Senior Sister Xiao Xiao. It is rumored that she has reached 9 Yuan Nirvana stage. Along with the strength of the Sky Emperor scripture, it is likely that she would be hard-pressed to find a worthy opponent unless one is an expert who has stepped into the mysterious life stage. You have forgotten about Lin Dong from Desolate Hall. Previously, he fought with Yao Ling, a former deacon of Yuan Gate, and even managed to injure him. That Yao Ling is an expert who had stepped into the 9 Yuan Nirvana stage a long time ago. Yes, I have also heard about this. If this is true, that Lin Dong is simply too perverse. Coincidentally, he is also a disciple of Desolate Hall. This time around, he should also possess the qualifications to study the Great Desolation Scripture. I wonder if he will succeed. No one knows. Although his performance has been extremely stellar ever since he joined Dao sect, the Great Desolation Scripture is something that even Big Senior Sister Xiao Xiao was unable to learn. This group of human figures that broke through the air and arrived was naturally Ying Xiao Xiao, Ying Huan Huan, and the rest. Following beside them were Qing Yi from Earth Hall, Mu Li from the Flood Hall, and some other extremely famous senior direct disciples from the other three halls. This lineup was considered to be the most magnificent one amongst the current younger generation members in Dao sect. Therefore, all the gazes in the mountains gathered towards them when they appeared. Ying Xiao Xiao and Ying Huan Huan, who were standing in front, were naturally the focal point of all their attention. However, comparatively speaking, most of the gazes from the younger disciples were gathered on the young lady with a black ponytail, who appeared extremely pure and lively. This did not mean that Ying Xiao Xiao lacked charm. However, her prestige amongst the younger disciples was simply too high. Furthermore, her usual cool demeanor also caused some disciples to treat her with exceptional respect. Hence, they naturally did not dare to look at her in the same way as they looked at Ying Huan Huan. Although Ying Huan Huan was merely wearing a simple white blouse and pants today, her figure appeared exceptionally lithe and delicate. Her clothes outlined a figure that was filled with liveliness and attracted a great attention. Together with her ponytail that jumped gently when she turned her head and the gentle blink of her bright charming large eyes, her appearance was so innocent that it was a complete mess. Ying Huan Huan's large eyes scanned her surroundings. However, she did not find that familiar figure. Her eyebrows were bunched up as she said, "That fellow Lin Dong is actually not around? Is he going to give this opportunity a miss? It is not strange for him to do so. Although Junior Lin Dong brother is extremely talented, he has merely just joined Desolate Hall." Standing beside her, Qing Yi laughed faintly. The reason that fellow joined Desolate Hall is because he is after the Great Desolation Scripture. How is it possible for him to give up on this opportunity? Moreover, he is already a senior direct disciple of Desolate Hall and he possesses the qualifications to study the Great Desolation Scripture. Ying Huan Huan rolled her eyes at Qing Yi and said. Qing Yi felt extremely displeased in his heart when he saw Ying Huan Huan talking about Lin Dong as if she was extremely familiar with him. However, he did not reveal anything as he did not want to be seen as a petty person. Immediately, he could only turn his head in a somewhat unnatural manner and softly speak to someone else besides him. Ying Xiaoxiao quietly shook her head when she saw this scene but did not say anything else. She merely threw her gaze towards the shaking mountain. Following the spread of the cracked line, a grayish-yellow-colored gigantic tablet was slowly breaking out of the mountain at that spot. A desolate aura that originated from the ancient times quietly fluctuated within this place. Ying Xiaoxiao's eyes were somewhat complicated as she watched the mountain. Her character was quite haughty. Back then, she arrogantly tried to learn the Great Desolation scripture. However, she ultimately failed after sitting there for months. This caused her to suffer quite a heavy blow. Great Desolate Tablet. Every pair of eyes in this place turned towards the enormous 10,000 feet large tablet that had broken out of the mountain. That large tablet was just like a mountain that was towering above the mountain peak. Its towering and majestic manner caused it to look just like a divine artifact from the ancient times. Elder sister, do you think that anyone from Desolate Hall will succeed this time around? Ying Huanhuan's large eyes were a little shaken as she looked at that enormous object that had broken out from the mountain. After which, she tugged Ying Xiaoxiao's wrist and softly asked. Jiang Hao and the other three hardly stand a chance. Ying Xiaoxiao glanced at Ying Huanhuan. She paused for a moment before she continued, if it is Lin Dong, he may stand a decent chance. Oh, Ying Huanhuan nodded quietly. Her long eyelashes blinked gently. The expression on her small face was a little complicated. Why? Ying Xiaoxiao asked uncertainly. If that fellow really comprehends it, wouldn't that mean that I will have to do whatever he says? Ying Huanhuan hesitated for a moment before she spoke haltingly with a reddened face. Even Ying Xiaoxiao felt neither able to laugh nor cry when she heard these words. She glared at Ying Huanhuan. You deserve it. Rumble. The mountain, which was shaking violently, finally came to a gradual stop. Everyone raised their heads and looked at the top of the mountain, where an enormous stone tablet, whose top had almost touched the Pill River, had appeared. All of them were as tiny as ants before that stone tablet. This was the Great Desolate Tablet. The most powerful scripture of the four great mysterious scriptures, the Great Desolation Scripture, was hidden within. However, since 100 years ago, the question on whether anyone could understand it has been left unanswered. The collapse of the mountain finally slowly came to a stop at this moment. 1,000 feet tall stone tablet now stood atop the mountain peak. The ancient yellowish hue on the tablet was due to centuries of sedimentation. An unusual and ancient ripple was emitted from the stone tablet, causing a desolate aura to fill the area. A desolate aura enveloped the land. It was as though the color of the sky had turned yellowish. In that moment, many felt as though they had been shuttled to an ancient land. Everyone's expression grew solemn as the desolate aura pervaded the air while the commotion slowly died down. Numerous intensely interested and respectful pairs of eyes stared at the enormous stone. It has finally opened again. Wu Dao looked at the incomparably large stone tablet. Emotion flashed across his eyes as he muttered. Ever since our Dao sect discovered this stone tablet back then, we decided to establish our sect in this place. The Desolate Hall was also born as a result. Thousands of years have passed. However, only a rare few individuals have managed to comprehend the Great Desolation Scripture. Chen Zhen softly sighed. Old fellow, you really speak unceremoniously. The Great Desolation Scripture is no ordinary martial arts. If it were so easy for an ordinary disciple to successfully learn it, the strength of our Dao sect would likely have long since exceeded the Yuan Gate. A burly middle-aged man standing beside Chen Zhen laughed and chided. This person was wearing black robes, and his demeanor was quite extraordinary. Both of his eyes swept around like hidden lightning, causing even space itself to become slightly distorted. He was the current master of the Sky Hall, Qi Lei. Chen Zhen also smiled when he heard this. After which, he glanced at the sky and said, "It is about time. It seems that Lin Dong has yet to arrive." Wu Hao's eyes swept around before speaking with a frown. "Relax, how is it possible for that little fellow to miss such an event?" Chen Zhen smiled as he shook his head. He turned around and looked at Jiang Hao and the three other senior direct disciples of the Desolate Hall. With a deep voice, he said, "All of you should prepare yourselves. Remember, don't force yourselves. This martial art relies on one's luck and affinity and it cannot be forced." Understood. Jiang Hao and the other three replied respectfully, while excitement colored their faces. After which, they exchanged a knowing glance as their bodies rushed out, before landing in front of the stone tablet at the mountaintop, under the countless gazes from the surrounding mountains. There were a couple of green rocks protruding from the cliff at that spot. The green rocks were as smooth as mirrors. They sat on them and raised their heads to gaze upon the 1,000-feet-tall tablet. At this moment, the feeling of being an ant suddenly arose in their hearts. Jiang Hao and the other three had grave expressions as they sat on the green rocks. Although they hid it well, there was still a trace of panic deep within their eyes. It was due to the enormous pressure that the enormous stone tablet gave. After Jiang Hao landed in front of the stone tablet, some noise once again arose from the surrounding area. Soon after, some people seemed to have discovered that something was missing. Immediately, their eyes began to sweep all over the mountains in an attempt to find that figure. That fellow is really a big shot. Everyone is always waiting for him. Ying Huan naturally understood who these people were looking for. Lin Dong might have just joined the Dao sect, but his reputation had soared rapidly. Not only did he obtain an impressive result at the bottom of the Pill River, which had surpassed even Senior Ju Tong, but he had even successfully learned the desolate demon eye that Senior Ju Tong was unable to learn. Furthermore, he was also chiefly responsible for bringing back the immortal Yuan ancient seed. These various achievements were sufficient to allow Lin Dong to become a dazzling new star within the Dao sect. This time around, everyone undoubtedly believed that he was the one who had the highest chances of understanding the Great Desolation scripture. His previous achievements are simply far too outstanding, Ying Xiaoxiao softly said. Oh! Ying Huan was startled when she heard this. Her big eyes suspiciously watched Ying Xiaoxiao. Clearly, she did not quite understand the meaning behind her words. Lin Dong is quite a prideful person. This was something that one could see ever since he joined the Desolate Hall. He was using Senior Ju Tong as a benchmark. Yin Xiaoxiao's eyes looked at the enormous stone tablet before she slowly said, as a fellow disciple of the Desolate Hall, he is unwilling to see his path being overshadowed by that figure. Therefore, he wants to surpass Senior Ju Tong. His potential can be ranked amongst the top 3 within the current Dao sect. It is likely that his future achievements will be quite substantial. However, the monstrosity of genius Senior Ju Tong is sufficient to cause many geniuses to feel inferior. Using him as a benchmark is not a good idea. Should he fail, he would likely find it difficulty to overcome that shadow. There are some people who will not be hurt even if they fall. Ying Xiaoxiao laughed bitterly when she spoke until this point. She softly said, Lin Dong is aiming too high. I'm afraid that should he meet a setback, he will end up suffering quite a big blow. When Ying Huan heard Ying Xiaoxiao words, her brows slightly knitted together. Before she spoke, elder sister is worried that Lin Dong will not recover from should he fail to comprehend the Great Desolation scripture. It would not be to the extent of not recovering from this setback. What he has been through, perhaps far exceeds what I have experienced. However, I'm afraid that this setback will affect his resilience. After all, it has been a smooth sailing trip for him on this journey of challenging Senior Ju Tong. Ying Xiaoxiao shook her head and said, however, the ones before were merely small tests. The current one is the true Gordian knot. Ying Huan's bright eyes blinked gently. She thought for a moment before raising her small face. Sunlight shone onto her exquisite face, and she hesitated for a while longer before speaking. Elder sister, although I do not know what Lin Dong has experienced, I think that elder sister has underestimated that fellow's resilience. Moreover, I have never seen that fellow fear anything. Even when he stayed behind alone to block Yao Ling and the Devil Seal Mass, I did not see any fear in his eyes. Moreover, I think that even though Senior Ju Tong enjoys a reputation that is greater than father within the hearts of our Dao sect disciples, it is likely that Lin Dong does not feel too much respect. He only views Senior Ju Tong as someone whom he will surpass on his journey. The sunlight from the sky was sprinkled down while she spoke, shining on the pure and exquisite small face of the young lady. A light arc extended along her white chin, causing her to appear extremely beautiful. The young lady at this moment also appeared to have recalled what Lin Dong had told her in the mountain crevice. She was simply unable to imagine how Lin Dong had already understood how to hide his hatred like a snake in the abyss and quietly evolve, when he was merely just a boy, who was even younger than she currently was. After enduring for so many years, he ultimately relied on his own strength to kill his enemy, who had once been able to easily destroy his small family. Ying Huan was truly unable to imagine how someone like that who possessed such frightening resilience would end up being unable to recover from this so-called failure. Ying Xiaoxiao was also stunned by Ying Huan's words. She immediately turned her head and stared at the young lady beside her. A moment later, the corners of her mouth lifted into a half-smile. From the looks of it, you seem to think very highly of him. I am merely speaking the truth. Elder sister, you should not speak nonsense. Ying Huan's face turned red as she mumbled. Ying Xiaoxiao declined to comment. She continued, since you think so highly of him, let's see what happens. This time around, he faces quite a huge amount of pressure. Should he fail to understand the scripture, it would be unavoidable for there to be some gossip. Whether he can avoid it will depend entirely on his ability. Ying Xiaoxiao's eyes suddenly moved after her voice sounded. She turned towards the distant sky and smiled. He has arrived. Swoosh! Just after Ying Xiaoxiao's voice sounded, a hurried rushing wind sound was suddenly heard in the distance. Immediately, the gazes on the mountain swiftly turned towards that direction. The atmosphere also turned fiery hot. Lin Dong has finally arrived. I was under the impression that he had given up. I wonder if he is able to comprehend the Great Desolation scripture. His previous achievements are merely child's play when compared to Senior Ju Tong. The current one will truly test his ability. That's right. Numerous private conversations spread like waves amongst the human sea. The rushing wind sound became increasingly loud while the voices spread. A few seconds later, a figure dashed through the air and appeared in the sky. My two teacher uncles, this disciple is late. When Lin Dong appeared in the sky, he was initially a little stunned by the densely packed sea of people in the mountains. Only after that did he raise his head and looked at Chen Zhen and Wu Dao. His voice contained an apologetic tone. It is fine since you made it here. Chen Zhen smilingly nodded. His eyes contained a glint as they swept over Lin Dong, before they suddenly focused. With his eyes, he was naturally able to tell that Lin Dong's strength had advanced quite greatly during the past half a month. You. Chen Zhen exchanged glances with Wu Dao. They could see joy and surprise in each other's eyes. Since you have arrived, you should head over. Remember, do not force it. Although the Great Desolation scripture is powerful, the most important thing is still oneself. Wu Dao waved his hand and laughed. This disciple will remember your advice. Lin Dong grinned and nodded. After which, he turned his head to look at the incomparably large desolate tablet. He inhaled a deep breath of air and suppressed the surging excitement within his heart. Ever since he had joined the Tao sect, the thing that he coveted the most was naturally the Great Desolation scripture, the strongest of the Tao sect's 4 great mysterious scriptures. This opportunity had finally arrived. Lin Dong focused on the Great Desolate tablet while his body moved and floated out. In the end, it slowly landed on a green rock. Lin Dong finally sensed the vast and mighty desolate chi when he stood in front of the Great Desolate tablet. When he stood at this place, it was as though he had returned to the vast ancient land of the past. Buzz. While Lin Dong immersed himself within this grand vastness, a slight ripple suddenly scattered from within his body. Immediately, his pupils abruptly shrunk. That ripple was minute and was extremely sudden. However, since the ripple had originated from within Lin Dong's body, he was instantly able to detect it. This also caused his pupils to show signs of tightly contracting. It was because this ripple was emitted by the mysterious stone talisman. Furthermore, this ripple was somewhat strange. To be precise, it was a clearly and obvious response to something. This was the first time something like this had ever occurred since the mysterious stone talisman had come into Lin Dong's possession. Why does the mysterious stone talisman respond to the great desolate tablet? Lin Dong frowned as he muttered to himself. He lifted his gaze and let it rest on the vast and majestic tablet. The surface of the tablet had gradually turned yellowish due to the passage of time. Furthermore, the surface was not completely bright and clean, and there were quite a few potholes, while a few minute cracks spread out on its surface like an insect. However, this was not a big problem for the gigantic tablet. Lin Dong's gaze carefully swept past every inch the stone tablet. After several minutes, his eyes suddenly focused as he looked towards a particular spot on the stone tablet. On the rough surface of the stone tablet were some faint small black dots that was extremely hard to be discovered by eye. When Lin Dong's eyes landed on those black dots, he suddenly felt the mysterious stone talisman within him started to shake as it emitted wave after wave of fluctuation. A glint of bewilderment flashed deep within Lin Dong's eyes as his gaze swept all around. He discovered that the number of small black dots on the surface of the stone tablet was not small. However, due to the enormous size of the stone tablet, coupled with the passing of time, leaving another 6 small black dots seemed to be nothing but ordinary. If not for the mysterious stone talisman within his body, even Lin Dong would have ignored these little black dots that seemed totally ordinary. Lin Dong stared at the little black dots and hesitated for a moment. Finally, he took a step forward, raised a finger and touched one of the little black dots. Lin Dong, Jiang Hao and the other 3 were extremely close to the stone tablet. Previously, Jiang Hao and the rest were paying extreme attention as they stared at the stone tablet and had also reached out and touched the surface with their hands. Therefore, the people around were not too surprised at Lin Dong's action. And just as the surrounding gazes moved away from him, Lin Dong's finger lightly descended on the little black dot on the surface of the tablet. At the moment of contact, Lin Dong's complexion rapidly changed. At the point of contact, a trace of fluctuation was transmitted into Lin Dong's body. That fluctuation was ice-cold without any hint of vitality. Gradually, it brought along a mysterious evil influence that could seemingly erase the myriad of living organisms from the world. Lin Dong's finger had only brushed past the little black dot for an instant before drawing back. After pulling his finger back, his face whitened as he stared in shock at the little black dots. That fluctuation was extremely bone-chilling and mysterious without any trace of vitality within it. Although Lin Dong knew that when one managed to reach the mysterious death stage, one's body would produce extremely destructive death chi, the sensation from those black dots were inherently different. Furthermore, the most important matter was that this was not the first time that Lin Dong had seen such a sinister and evil thing. This kind of bone-chillingly evil feeling would blot the skies. And every living thing within the world would seemingly be killed and destroyed wherever it passed. Lin Dong pursed his lips and thought about his time in the ancient sect. The previous owner of the devouring ancestral symbol had seemingly perished due to some unknown sinister and dark thing. Lin Dong had felt the same kind of fluctuation from the surface of the great desolate tablet today. What did this mean? What exactly is this thing? Lin Dong muttered to himself in a low voice. Even something as strong as that ancient sect or someone as strong as that black-eyed old man who had the devouring ancestral symbol had difficulty in resisting that unknown black thing. What exacting was it? While Lin Dong was pondering about this before the stone tablet, Jiang Hao and the other 3 had already prepared to proceed on as they sat on a green rocks in from the stone tablet with solemn expressions. Lin Dong. Wu Dao gave a shout, which finally managed to wake Lin Dong from his absent-minded state. After taking a deep look at the stone tablet in front of him, he retreated to the green rock and proceeded to sit down. Upon seeing the 5 take their seats, Wu Dao gave a faint nod before waving his sleeve. Desolate force that blotted the skies surged out of his body before turning into a beam and descending onto the surface of the great desolate tablet. Buzz buzz. Following the descent of the gigantic beam of desolate force, the tablet immediately started to send out minute vibrations. Ray after ray of dusky yellow light started to shoot out from the body of the tablet, before completely enveloping Lin Dong and the other 4. The instant Lin Dong was enveloped by the light, his body suddenly trembled as he felt an irresistible attractive force erupting from the surface of the tablet. In the next instant, his consciousness started to grow blurry as his vision rapidly turned to darkness. Innumerable gazes gathered on the 5 human figures that are enveloped by pillars of light. From the looks of it, it seemed that the process towards the comprehension of the Great Desolate Tablet had already begun. Big Sis, what exactly will one encounter when comprehending the Great Desolation Scripture? Yin Huan was wide-eyed as she gazed at the 5 unmoving figures within the pillars of light. She could not help but ask Yin Huan as she seemed to be the only one here who had experienced it. After her question appeared, Jing Yi and the rest turned their heads and stared at Ying Xiaoxiao. It was obvious that they were interested in this question. Ying Xiaoxiao frowned a little. She looked absent-mindedly at the gigantic stone tablet, before replying in a soft voice, "The Great Desolate Tablet is extremely powerful." "Yes, I know. Our Dao sect elders had combined their efforts many times but were unable to move the Great Desolate Tablet or control when it opens. They can only assist it with the power of the Pill River every once in a while." Ying Huan continuously nodded her head in agreement. When comprehending the Great Desolate Tablet, one would be sucked into the space within the tablet, in there is a boundless and desolate land. It has no end and no signs of life, only desolation, let alone any inkling of the Great Desolation Scripture. It should be some type of test, right? Did Senior Sister Xiao manage to understand anything? Qing Yi asked thoughtfully. Ying Xiao shot a look at him. This made Qing Yi understand as he resentfully laughed for a while. If Ying Xiao had managed to pass, she would not have failed in the comprehension. "After I entered, I did not walk at all and just sat there for a very long time," replied Ying Xiao in a soft voice. "Coping with ever-changing chaos by being as steady as a rock," praised Mu Li from the flood hall. He was not trying to flatter anyone. Compared to walking around in confusion and wasting energy, it would be much better to calm one's heart and start to ponder on how to overcome such a trial. However, it was regretful that I was still unable to overcome that trial. "Perhaps I'm unable to comprehend the true essence of desolation," exclaimed Ying Xiao with a voice brimming with regret. "If it was so easy to overcome it, the Great Desolate Tablet would not have attracted that much attention." Mu Li gave a smile before turning his gaze towards the 5 figures in front of the stone tablet and said, "I wonder if the 5 of them will be able to attain anything this time. I'm also looking forward to it." Ying Xiao said while slowly nodding her head. Her eyes shifted slightly as she shot an extra glance at the youthful figure on the furthest left, Lin Dong. "What is this damned place?" The sky was filled with a dusky grey color without any cracks. It was as if poison had yet to completely separate from the sky when this space was born. Under the dusky skies was a boundless and desolate land as far as one's eyes could see. The ground was present in a dusky yellow color with an occasional appearance of dried grass. However, there was no life here. Just a few cracks that spread out on the ground and extended past one's line of sight into the distance. Currently, there was a human figure on the boundless land without any end looking helplessly at this scene as he sighed at the heavens. The human figure was naturally the Lin Dong that had entered the Great Desolate Tablet. He stared at this seemingly ancient and endless land with an unconcealable bitter smile on his face. This should be the Great Desolate Tablet's trial. Lin Dong raised his head as he scanned his surroundings. After a single look, he saw that the extreme limits of his sight were still the same repetitive desolate land. His tiny and insignificant body stood up in this boundless land. This kind of desolation could seemingly turn people into soil to be buried here forever. It made one feel as if one was unable to breathe. "Who?" Lin Dong exhaled deeply as his eyes gradually hardened. Since he had already arrived, he should see exactly what the Great Desolate Tablet wanted to do. "Let's go," Lin Dong said while grinning. This was his choice, which was completely different from Ying Xiao's. He did not like the idea of painfully sitting down quietly. Even if it might be possible that he was only wasting energy, he wanted to personally give it a try. The young man trekked forward on this boundless land. The look in his eyes made was one that wanted to crack open the desolation within this stretch land. However, maybe even Lin Dong himself was unable to imagine that this walk of his would last for an entire month. This video will end here.